Hey everyone, and welcome to another Lightroom tutorial. Today I'm going to be answering a question from a viewer who is asking about working with her files from Lightroom in Photoshop, and then also how to get those files into the proper format for different uses and the right color profiles and things like that. So basically what she was doing is exporting her photos from Lightroom and then opening them up in Photoshop and editing those, and then trying to save them for all these different things like printing or uploading to the web. And she was running into problems with her color. So she would get prints back later from the lab that didn't look right. So we're going to address all those issues. And the first thing I want to mention is you should be working with a calibrated monitor. So one of the reasons that you may have some issues coming back from the lab, now this isn't the only reason, so stick with me, but one of the issues that you may have is you're working with a monitor that is just the color's off. So pick up a color calibration device. They're not that expensive, and calibrate your monitor, and that will help a lot. You can also do a little bit of research on what kind of monitors are best to use for photo editing. But, you know, really, you don't need to spend a ton of money on a monitor to get a decent result. Just make sure that whatever you're using is calibrated. And if you're using some crazy old monitor or something like that, or something really cheap and cheesy, then maybe upgrade to something decent and make sure it's calibrated. If you're into researching monitors, you can do that and find the best one for you. But that's not what we're talking about today. So moving on from that, make sure your monitor is calibrated. That might take care of some of your problems. But some of the problems might also come from color profiles, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. So moving on, we've got this image here, and I kind of want to walk you through what's going on down here with the rest of these images. So you'll see that I've got this one colored in red, and some of them are green and yellow, and they're all rated differently. So basically what I do when I first get a shoot is I import those photos into Lightroom, and I go through and start rating them. So the keyboard numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on your keyboard will rate whichever photo you have selected the rating that you type in, so up to 5 stars. And that helps you filter down your results over here in the filter section, so that you can only look at, if I wanted to just look at images that were 3 stars and above, for example, I can do that, which is what I'm doing right now. You can see I have 3 stars selected. So once I've got it narrowed down to what I'm trying to edit, I then color code them. So these red ones need to be edited. The yellow ones are the unedited versions, and the green ones are edited versions. And that'll make more sense in a little bit. But to color code the images, you just use the keyboard numbers 6, 7, and 8 for red, yellow, and green, respectively. So for example, here you can look at this image. This is the unretouched version, and I have it coded in yellow. And if you go to the green one right next to it that looks the same, you'll see it's the retouched version. And if we go back to our image we're going to use today, this one's not retouched at all. This was a image that we didn't end up keeping, so it didn't get retouched. And we'll start with this image and start from here, and I'm just going to walk you through my process from start to finish from this point. Skipping over some of the parts that don't really matter for what we're talking about today. So if we started out, we'd be in the library module over here, and we'd want to hop over to the develop module. Just click on develop over here. And here in the develop module, we can make all kinds of adjustments. So that's not what today is about. So I've got a preset here that I'm just going to click on to apply some things here. And maybe crop it a little bit. Whatever we want to do, we can do in the develop module in Lightroom. And then we're going to hop over to Photoshop. So this is maybe where you started having trouble. You may have gone to file and then exported the file now to a folder on your hard drive, and then opened up Photoshop and edited that photo in Photoshop and then moved on from there. But what I want to show you today is how to go directly from Lightroom into Photoshop, where Lightroom is aware of what you're doing in Photoshop, so that when you finish your editing and you click save in Photoshop, everything that you've done in Photoshop just comes right back over to Lightroom. So I'm going to demonstrate that right now. So I'm going to change the color rating here to yellow on this photo because we're about to go edit it. And so when we come back in, we're going to rate that edit, or we're going to code that edit version with the green label so that we can easily tell the difference when we're back in Lightroom. So first, before we open up the image in Photoshop, we're going to make sure that some settings are correct. So what we want to do is go over to Edit and go to Preferences. And inside of the Preferences box here, you'll see that we have an External Editing tab. So I'm going to click on that, and you'll see that the top section here is for editing in Adobe Photoshop. So we just want to select all the settings here that work for us. Okay, so if you want to save it in a PSD format, that's fine. TIFF is fine for me. And you'll notice here it says 16-bit ProPhoto RGB is the recommended choice for preserving color details from Lightroom. So I've got that selected, ProPhoto RGB, 16 bits, resolution is 240. You could change this if you want. And the compression type is zip. You can also do no compression, for example, and different things. But we'll leave this just like this is. You can copy these settings for yourself if you like, or if you need to tweak something for your own purposes, that's fine too. And we'll click OK. So once you've got those settings figured out, all you've got to do to hop over to Photoshop is right-click on your image, go to Edit In, and click Edit in Adobe Photoshop. So that's actually, Photoshop's not open yet, so it's going to open up Photoshop and then open up that file for us. Okay, here we go. So we can make whatever changes we want. So just for today, for this demonstration, let's just click on our text tool and we'll add some text. We'll make it white so we can see it. Edited in Photoshop, we'll say. Okay, so I've typed edited in Photoshop. We're just going to make it big so we can see it. Real big. Okay. And that text is there, so we can go and tell which photo it is easily in the in Lightroom when we go back. So let's say you've made all your retouches, everything's great. Now all you've got to do is come up and click File and Save. And you'll see it in the progress bar here, saving the photo. And when it's done, just close it out. You can close Photoshop if you'd like, or if you've got more work to do, you can leave it open. And when we come back to Lightroom, there's our image, and it's right next to our other image. And you'll notice they're both rated yellow. So I'm just going to go ahead and change this one's rating to green. And so this is how I've gotten to this point with all these other images. I've gone into Photoshop, done some advanced retouching, saved it, and then come back in to Lightroom, and that's what happens. So now, when I go back into Lightroom anytime, I've got this image, and the great thing about doing it this way is everything is in one place. You can see right where the edited version is. It's right next to the older version, so you don't have any confusion there. And if I want to go back and edit this photo again in Lightroom, I can come back, or in Photoshop, excuse me, I can come back in, right-click on the image, go to Edit in Photoshop, and when I do that, it's going to ask me, what do you want to do? So I can edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments, I can edit a copy of the original file, or I can actually go back in and edit that original file. So if I select original file and click Edit, it opens up Photoshop, and I still have access to that layer. So I could go back in, and you'll notice I have a little bit of this brown letter got left in here that from my initial, when I started typing. So I could go back and edit this text if I had made a mistake, or change the font, or do whatever I want to do. And then just click Save and come back in, and those changes will be updated. So that's really, really cool. And everything is right here inside of Lightroom. So what we need to understand about this file is, now that I've gone and edited it in Photoshop and then brought it back into Lightroom, it's stored as a TIFF file in 16-bit ProPhoto RGB, just like those settings that I selected in Lightroom earlier. So, which is great, that's what we wanted, but we don't want that setting for printing, obviously. But that's okay, because when we export from Lightroom, we can make those setting decisions. So now we'll go to File and Export, and you can select where you want to put your file. So right now I have desktop selected, and then I usually just type in a different subfolder name here, so it creates a new folder excuse me, creates a new folder on my desktop. So moving on from here, we'll scroll down. You can name the file. So if you rename it, you can select from all these different options and do all kinds of naming options. You can explore that on your own. It's simple. And the important thing we want to see here is the file settings and the image sizing. So here's where you're going to select what type of file type you want, what kind of color space you want it in. I usually leave quality at 100 unless you're trying to keep file size limited. And you can also limit the file size to a certain size. I've found that to be a little bit buggy, so I don't use that feature, but you might have better luck with it. And finally, image sizing. So my favorite thing to do is, if I need to resize an image, I just resize it for the long edge. So if you're resizing for Facebook, you might want to say 2048 pixels on the longest side at 72 pixels per inch. That's a great setting for Facebook. Or you might have other custom settings for printing or anything else. You can also set a little bit of output sharpening if you want to do that. And then just click export, and that will export that photo for you. So I would use the export dialog to do all these different file types that you need. So if you need a small image for the web, go in there, select the photos you want, and Lightroom, click export and export them for the web. Put that in a temporary folder like on your desktop. And then once you've actually exported those photos and then gone and uploaded them to the web, you can just delete that folder from your desktop, because if you need another image for the web later on, you can just go into Lightroom and re-export it. And that way you don't have all these weird folders all over your computer with multiple versions of the same photo saved in different JPEG sizes and color profiles and different things. You don't have to worry about any of that being floating around and storing it, because you can always go back to this original file and just quickly export whatever file type you need for that situation. So I hope that's answered your question, and I hope that's helped everyone else a little bit too. If you guys have any questions about anything on this video, just leave a comment or direct message me through YouTube, and I'll do the best I can to answer it, either in a reply to your comment or in a video. And yeah, so I hope this has been helpful, and I'll see you guys next time.